And today, we're going to be creating this render here. I need to add a plane. That's what I need to do. Go ahead and scale that up. I'm thinking that we'll just start with our pizza shape here, of getting only the areas in which we are seeing from the camera. Add it. We'll do a 50mm lens, maybe even a 55mm lens on this. Cool. So we got our pizza down, guys. We got our pizza. This is actually a really easy scene to do this week because all we have to do is use Botanic to kind of light it or to set up all the grass. Move that up, and I'm going to scale it down again just a little bit more. Let's just duplicate the same rock, honestly. We just rotate it around. We don't need any different rocks. And let's see, let's add in another rock somewhere right here. Again, these are like big photo scans, so we kind of just want to scale them to the size that we're going to need them. Add new Eevee. I mean, that's pretty cool. Thinking that's probably roughly the correct height. And then now if we apply all transforms to this guy and then add new Eevee, the roots will be the correct scale. And I mean, that's not bad. I would say let's make it a little thicker. It's pretty cool. We might even want to add in a subdivide surface though to round out some of the edges just so that it doesn't feel so jaggedy. Yeah, that certainly helps a little bit. Add in some of these bushes over here as well. And scale that down a little bit too. Really now the whole thing is going to be trying to create a landscape that feels very natural and realistic, you know? And a lot of this is just feeling it out. Feel it out. I'm just going to start to add in some more of these bushes around here. There is some clipping right there, so let's see if we can adjust some of these branches because we don't want them necessarily to be clipping through our rock. Might just delete this whole branch here so that way it's just probably going to be the easiest thing, honestly. Control L, I think we'll select the whole thing. I don't know with this Eevee thing. There we go. And then we can delete the vertices. I think that should do it. Thinking we're going to want some more rocks throughout because we don't really have too many of those. So I'm going to select some of these smaller guys over here and duplicate that this direction. I'm going to scale these down but on individual origins. That way they're just smaller individual rocks. We duplicate this around. Let's just create some rocks of different height that are just popping up a little bit. And start adding in a few more bushes. So I'm going to go back to spawn assets. Let's see what we got here. This is going to just be a layer of ferns behind these other plants. Yeah, something like that. And that way, just barely seeing it. It's just adding a little bit of life into our shot without us knowing too much that it's there. Just going to rotate them around. Okay, and now we can start adding in some of the trees back here. Go and spawn that. And just kind of moving it back to where that tree is back there. Seems about right. But the idea is that we can actually edit the tree to have more of that dark red kind of like color that it has. And when we duplicate these and place them in here, we can actually also just randomize the variant. It's kind of overall just like duplicate these and then just fill them into the areas that we want. I don't want it to be too distracting to the rest of the image, so because the way that we want the light to kind of like stream in from up here, we're going to be creating that with our treescape. So now with these trees, because of how thick we're going to need everything, let's just go ahead and duplicate it and just rotate them around. And we have individual origins selected, so it's just going to rotate them on themselves, which is great because that's all we need. I'm going to focus on our main area here. This will help us also dictate really what we're trying to do. So but set your 3D cursor to the area in which like the camera focus is going to be. For us, it's going to be kind of like this section here. We're going to add in like a dandelion or something like that to like this section. I'm going to add in like, ooh, that's massive. I'm going to take this guy and then put him in the ground. Something like that. It just feels a little like it's been pushed to the side over the years by some animals brushing past it. I'm using kind of like this proportional editing. That's going to allow me to rotate that up and not have any problems. Just want like one red flower on it. That way we're not drawing our eyes to like too much. Let's try this. I'm going to start deleting some of these leaves as well. And now, yeah, feels a little better. Now let's go ahead and set the focus on like this specific flower. So I'm going to add in an empty, let's do a plane axis, scale that guy down, and then enable depth of field. I'm going to select focus. And since this is like a very small scene, it's going to look better with shallower depth of field. So if I go into here and then turn on, under our view settings, we go select depth of field. I'm going to grab both these guys, and as we move it around in our scene, we can see kind of like the focus being shifted. And we're going to find our happy spot. I think that's nice. I think that's going to play nicely with the scene. Okay. Now it's just a lot of shaping to get it to be where we need it, and also getting the light direction to be correct. What I'm trying to do is create like this opening that we're not necessarily seeing right now. It needs to feel darker in this section here, and like a, you know, kind of a bit of a warmer sun or something like that to make it feel more sunset-y. We'll also probably increase the density overall, so let's increase that to something. Let's see what 3 looks like. What I like to do also in my scenes here is add in like a cube, and let's go ahead and scale this cube up. Let's go ahead and take this guy, scale him by X, scale him by Y. Here I'm going to add in a new scatter node for our volume. Let's do a vertical split and add in a shader editor. We're going to delete our principal BSDF for this fog element that we're doing, and add in a nice volume scatter. Include the anisotropy a little bit higher, and let's see, 0.01 for this. Well, I'm going to turn on viewport display. Let's scroll down here and then swap this over to a wireframe. And I'm going to add in another sun that will just face this direction for the lighting of this kind of flare that we're adding in here. And for our density, let's hike this number up to something a little bit higher. And you know what? You're probably right with the Gobo. Oopsies. I'm going to add in one. Let's disable this botanic. And then let's add in our circle. Scale that to something like that. Scale that up completely. Scale that down to something that's manageable. This guy right here, let's rotate him this direction and kind of just line this up with our circle kind of going where we want our shadows to be. Okay, so now we're going to get our lighting to kind of be in that area there because of this Gobo. Now, if we take our overall light here, I'm going to just increase the intensity quite a bit. And then the angle, we can... Is it decrease the angle? Is that what we want? Okay, I'm going to unhide everything now. Go back to camera view here. We should already be getting some lens flares that are happening. But I'm thinking that the density of this is fighting against the density of everything else. So let's decrease that back to like a 1.2. And yeah, now we're starting to get those streaks inside of our image there. The reason I added this circle at the very top though was that way we can actually create shapes based off of this. Thinking something like that, and then we can remove some of the saturation. This is kind of what I'm looking through. I just looked through like black and white photos of a Gobo. And now if we go to our plane that we have selected all the way up here at the top, I'm going to add in a new material called Gobo. So if I add a new material to this circle here and then add in an image texture, I'm going to use Smart UV Unwrap, and then that way I can kind of just get this texture to be here. Here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to use Color Ramp, drag that into there. I'm going to plug that into the alpha here, and then that's going to kind of make it so that only a few light can really make it through that area. I'm going to grab these vines and let's add a new material in for them. Looks pretty good. It's pretty green. I don't want the ground to be more dirty. Let's select that flower that is the left side of our screen here and duplicate. And I'm going to select the flower head. And let's invert the selection and delete everything. And then for the ground, I'm going to hand paint the areas in which we want the dirt to be. So let's select the ground, and under our base grade here, I'm going to go over to texture paint. Go to material preview. We can do this pretty simply here. I think I could do a texture coordinate and drop that in between the UV. If I drag this into the UV map selection, it's a little bit closer, but now let's go ahead and use a mapping, and we plug that into here. Add an image texture. We want dirt for the majority of the area. So let's go back over here to texture paint, and I'm going to say image new, and we will change this size to be like 4096 by 4096. Could just do this all in one tab. I need to select that untitled photo because I actually didn't give it a name. And we go ahead and view it. It'll just be all black. So now if we go to our texture paint option, wherever we paint, it will be white. We could do this from the camera angle. Actually, it's a little bit easier doing it from the camera angle. So for this area over here, I like to use sometimes a texture mask. And they have a default texture mask here. I'm going to use something like, let's use this number 15 here. And then instead of tiled, I'm going to do something like random. And what we can do now is I can paint in around these certain areas. Okay, so that's all selected and inputted into our lovely photo that we have. Let's go ahead back over to our layout section. And we're going to notice immediately that it already has our image texture loaded in here because that's what we did previously. Okay, so we've got our basic green grass here, and then we've got our mat for what we will be doing between that. Let's use a mix shader node, and if I drop that down here, essentially we're going to want to create a new principled BSDF or something, because we'll be creating this material ourselves. But let's just say we wanted to have like a brown dirt, and I will be adding in those textures here soon. I'm going to plug both those in. Everywhere that it's white, it's going to put in the brown texture, and everywhere that it's black, it's going to put in the green grass. And so I'll drop that into the FAC at the very top here. And if we view this now, kind of see this happen live. Let's turn the specularity off to look at this a little closer. Okay, our vines that we're adding in. But we can use Blender Kit. Let's actually use Blender Kit to see if they've got like any like twig wood textures. It's going to make all the vines have that material on it. It's kind of hard to judge because everything feels very swampy right now. Need some more highlights in there for the hotness of the sun coming in through the back. Might do one more other thing. Let's grab another sun here. I'm gonna go, I like to sometimes go to camera view, and then if we, whoopsies, grab that sun and then just kind of put it in the camera view, we could see what direction it's gonna point in orientation to the camera. And then this sun, let's make it a little warmer and change the intensity, something a little higher. Let's go to the top view here. I'm going to want Something a little bit more like the sun's right here. Then we can adjust our Gobo again here in a second. We're just going to play around a little bit to get the effect that we need. And that's creating kind of like a nice wash there. And let's make the temperature cooler, I think. Yeah. There's a lot of like this weird, you can see through the trees way back there. So we're going to want to fill that in, of course, as well. When we take these bushes, we can take these all the way back here. Scale them up. If we grab these, scale them up a little bit, not by much. Something like that should be fine. And I start to duplicate these and make them a little thicker. I can then grab these bushes and start to duplicate them throughout our scene here. And yeah, that definitely thickens that up a little bit. Okay, let's jump back into this here. I'm going to select the dirt though first, and let's start working on that. Let's grab that. I don't want to overwrite this base grass. That's what I was kind of concerned about. But if we add it into its own separate material, it's not being used right now. But what we can do is we can just select this whole thing. Let's copy it. And then if we go over to our base grass now, and then we just hit paste, that's going to drop this material down here. We're going to need to take this displacement though. Well, firstly, we could take the principal BSDF and replace the brown that we already have. Okay. Let's grab our displacement and then make sure that's plugged into the displacement at the very top. And overall, let's change the scale option over here. So we'll change the value to something higher. Let's do 3. Plug that into scale. I think somewhere around there. I'm just kind of like looking at the overall scale of the scene and if it fits. I'm going to take our 3D cursor here and place that in the center of our scene. Let's go ahead and duplicate one of these lights. I'm going to rotate around that 3D cursor. Roughly a nice angle that's going to give us some shape, but also fill in that whole section so that way it doesn't feel so dark here. Let's see, this light here, let's darken it slightly. Give everything overall a different shade. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm not a fan of these twigs now, so let's start making some adjustments on the vine material that we have over here. Let's change the value first of all. Let's like half it, make it a little darker, so that way it's a little contrast here in the scene. I think this flare might be a little intensive, so let's add a little bit more trees closer to the camera on this side, similar as this tree here, so that way it feels like the light is kind of coming more down in the center of the image, rather than it washing over the overall back area. If we just move him over, I'm going to duplicate him also. Kind of wanting to maybe scale him too, so let's grab this plane as a whole, weight paint now, and I just want this section here to be selected, not too much. Probably want this here. That's good. That even might be too much, but let's see what that looks like. So we'll go back to object mode here, go to render view, and then see what that gives us. Oh, that's feeling so much better. It just felt too flat before. Just want to add some more rocks in. This will add a little more detail to our shot. I'm going to add in a new plane. Let's scale it down. Let's first get this to work. So I'm going to drop in a bounce plane as you suggested. Let's go into our settings here, and we have to deselect shadow. Also volume scatter, because I feel like that's going to break things. If we drop it into a new collection called bounce, what you can do is you can select here indirect lighting only, and then now if I select our bounce and we say indirect lighting only, it's only going to use that as a source of light. And right now that's just pure white. If we add in a new plane and change this to a different color, I think white is our best bet right now, although we can make this whatever color we want. Don't want it to light up our overall environment too much. That looks pretty cool. See what changing the color of the plane does for us. I actually think that looks better as yellow. Let's go ahead and work on some butterfly stuffs. Okay, so let's do this. We're gonna drop in a plane. into our world. And let's create a new material. Here we go. We got the albedo pass. We'll drag that in. And then we have the opacity. Where's that? I just saw it. Opacity. We have some normals. And we have a displacement. This is great stuff, guys. A roughness. And a translucency. What we're going to need to do first is let's take the albedo pass. We'll plug that into our base color. And then we can plug roughness into the roughness. To use opacity, we're going to just move that over here. And then if I plug this into our opacity, or sorry, alpha, that's what we're trying to plug it into. And let's create a normal map. And then this gets plugged into the normal, and it converts it to normal data. And then that gets plugged into our new principled BSDF. And then our displacement then gets plugged into our material output. And voila. The only other thing that we might want is this. And this, I think these are specularity. So let's go ahead and plug in our AO into the specularity. The other thing we're going to want to do is go to like a material preview window. And we've got a few different butterflies here. All we have to do now is go into edit mode. And using our knife tool, we can chop out our different butterflies that we have. So I'm actually going to do this like this. Okay, we're just going to chop all the way down the middle here. And then that's that. And then we're going to chop to here. And we're going to chop to here. And we'll just press enter again. And I'm just going to keep doing that. Grab the selection tool now. And if you grab this guy, and I think if you press Y, it makes him separated from everybody else. So we'll just keep doing that. And then now, if I select an individual one, I could say P selection. And then I could select this guy and say P selection. Okay. And now we'll go ahead and deselect everything. Now, if we go into here and I add in a loop cut, I'm going to add in a loop cut right where the spine of the butterfly is. So that way it's kind of rotating around that specific area. And we're going to do that with every single one of those. So we're just adding another loop cut. Great. And so now we can populate our scene with butterflies in different areas. And now here's what we could do. We could grab both those edges like that, and just grabbing them, we just move that up. And so now the wings are going to be kind of higher up in the air. I'm just going to scale those inwards. Oh, not on individual words. We're going to want that on medium point. And so that way it's actually flapping its wings depending on what we want. And then overall, that's pretty nice. I have quite a bit of light on that one butterfly, so we might want to adjust that. Translucent BSDF. We're going to lose a few of the other options, but here's what we could do. So you're saying plug that into the translucency. We'll plug the normals in how we would normally plug the normals, and displacement's still the same. We are missing roughness, but now if we do a mix shader, we can use a transparent BSDF and then plug in the opacity to the FAC, plug that into the surface. Oh, nope, we need to flop those. And let's actually use this inside of the translucency color. That looks pretty good. Which, by the way, I actually need to set this to non-color, I think. Okay, there we go. Some wonderful little butterflies into our scene. This pool of light that's hitting back here needs to be more intense on that back section, I think. Let's add in another area light. And we're just going to move that back to this section here. And I want it to actually be a spotlight, I think. Just trying to make this section here hotter. And that works pretty nicely there already. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in a spotlight that is specifically pointed at this section here. And then that way it just feels like the sun is hitting more of that. I think we could find, yeah, fallen leaves. Yeah, I did that. Sweet, guys. Another thing we could do is let's go in and add in a new group. And then we will rename this group to leaves. I'm going to go to weight paint now, and then we'll just paint in the areas in which we will want those leaves to be fallen. And now go back to object mode, and if I set the density to leaves, whoa, too many. Set that to like 500, and then adjust the scale, of course, on this. Let's disable that. We don't need grass. We just need these leaves. Set that to the density of the leaves. So now it's only going to place all our leaves in that specific area. And then now let's adjust the number of this to like 500. And then let's change the scale of this as well. These are way too big. And then adjust the phase of this. Probably the number as well. And then overall size still needs to be probably a little smaller. Something like that maybe even. But that certainly helps with the overall like twigs in the ground. Let's go over some of the render settings that we're going to do here. I'm going to keep the denoising at like 4096. That's a bit high, but I want it to be more pristine inside the composite. The other thing that I'm going to swap over here is I'm going to swap it from PNG to OpenEXR multi-layer. I'm just going to render this out at full res, and then under passes we can scroll down here and select object and material. This is now finished rendering. And let's go ahead, and the first thing we're going to need to do is shuffle the correct channels in. So it's looking for RGBA channels, whereas Blender puts this on the combined. So if we drag those all over to the RGBA, we're going to get the correct settings there. Add a little more contrast in the shot. I think also we're going to have to remove a little bit of saturation. I'm going to lift kind of the black areas a little bit. And we're not going to do much of this, but let's just change the tolerance on this a little higher. Or yeah, the brightness is not going to be high, and then the saturation, let's just put that down to like a 0.8. This tolerance should be a little higher as well for this. And then overall, the size of this is quite a bit smaller. And then the shadows, let's actually take the shadows and then change the gain of this to be a little more blue. I'm actually going to keep it just as green, but the reds here, I'm just going to bring those down a little bit more. And let's see, we're just going to have to roto this, guys. I like that a little bit better. I'm almost wanting the shadows to feel a little more shadowy. Our overall glow that we're having all the way over here, I might want the tolerance to be a little less. Not a fan of noise in like extreme highlights, so I like to use a keyer. And let's just move this all the way back here. And then if we use a merge node between the two of these, or between lens distortion and the keyer, we can use this as our kind of alpha that we're doing. And this alpha is only going to be of the brightest parts of your image. So we can actually adjust the amount of brightest parts of the image to a smaller value. Something like that should be fine. And so now it's only going to add green into the sections of our image that are not highlighted, and it's not going to have it in the most highlighted portions of your image. So I'm kind of desaturating just the red channel back there. And then I'm trying to... What I'll need to do is I'll need to bring the red back in from the actual butterflies, because I don't want their red to be... The idea is that right now what's going on is that everything is just such a same color back here that these butterflies are kind of disappearing. Definitely want that butterfly to be a little more red, and let's make this one a little more red as well. Oh, you know, I know what I gotta do. This right here doesn't get inverted. This mask right here, we add in an overall roto. That'll be the entire image. And then this right here, we hit minus on, and then this will be minus as well. And now if we grab both these Bezier curves and drag them above it, it's going to be minusing it out later. And now with that new roto that we just created here, I'm just going to set that to minus. And we could probably add another edge blur, just a little bit, not too much, but that way there's a little bit of a fall off and there's no sharp edges. And now that's going to desaturate only the background there. Do something like that. And then if we do another saturation node, so now we got that whole background there. And we're going to uncheck red, let's uncheck green, and we're going to be saturating only the blue channel. What we could also do is just add in a grade node and then use that same mask and then change the white point here to something that, like, maybe we want it to be a little more, that feels better. And of course we can go in and add in all of our butterflies now that we've been skipping over. So it's probably going to look, it's always one of those things where you try to get away with having less butterflies and then you find out that it actually would be better if you actually just went through and did your job in the first place and did all those butterflies. Okay, there we go. There's all our butterflies. I just need to set all of them to minus. Cool. So now that's going to affect everything except for our butterflies. Yeah, this is making this a little too purple. I see what you're saying. I know. Lens flares. We're definitely going to make this like very, very minor, but I want something in there. Let's do that, and then we're going to change the overall brightness here. And that's kind of what that's doing there. And all of this, let's make it actually happen before the grain. And then overall brightness, let's see. And then we just adjust the overall brightness down a little bit. That's gonna do it. Again, thank you guys so much. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Keep creating and do cool things. Bye.